Hey. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm so excited that you are all here today. I am Allison Cooper, the CEO of Influencer Secrets Academy, and I am here with Dan Morris, who's the CEO of Audience Industries, and we're going to dive into everything podcasting today. So I'm going to let Dan take it away, share a little bit about yourself, and tell everybody what you do.
Okay, well, let's start with a disclaimer. Let's do that. Some people have watched the first 30 seconds and have decided, I'm not a podcaster, so I'm not going to. But I'm going to tell you right now that it doesn't matter whether you're a podcaster or not. Like, we're going to talk about stuff that can help your business.
Yeah.
So stay tuned because we're going to be talking about awesome things, even if you're not a podcaster.
I love that.
So I have to say that because I like podcasting is my thing. I don't know how it became my thing. I don't really know. But I do know that when I was younger, I used to listen to this radio guy named Paul Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was maybe the most famous radio man for 40 years. And he would tell these stories. His son wrote the stories, and it was his voice and his personality. But he would tell these stories, and it would always be a famous person. And he would tell all about the famous person, like Little Jack. And at the very end, you would find out it's John F. Kennedy. It was called The Rest of the Story. And he would always end it with, and now you know the rest of the story.
I love it.
So I loved it. Like, it came on at noon. It was 5 or 7 minutes. I don't even know how that used to work. Like, how did a radio station stick in a 5-minute show? I don't really know. But I've always wanted my kids to have that thing, like where you're listening and a story unfolds in your head. And so I decided because Paul Harvey died in the 90s, I think. I decided I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do exactly what he did, but I'm going to do that. I want to create that wow, like that moment where you're like, whoa, that was awesome. Like, I wanted to create that. So that's what I did. And I've been doing it for this one for 5 years. And then we did it. My wife and I did one together for, I think we did 220 episodes of our Amplify Today.
Mm-hmm.
And the most valuable part about a podcast for business owners is that it is the single only form of media that your audience will listen to without interruptions. They'll listen to it in the car. They'll listen to it while they're jogging. They'll listen to it at the gym on the treadmill. Everything else comes with kids screaming in the background and all kinds of distractions. But there are zero distractions when you're at the gym and you watch somebody on the treadmill with earbuds in. They're just paying attention. And it's your voice in their head, and you're telling them stuff that will make their life better. They make them more money, make their business better. It's the only thing. There's nothing else. Everything else comes with distractions. So if you don't have a podcast, you can be that voice in someone's ear by being a guest on someone's podcast. And if you are a podcaster, then you already know you have that opportunity to say something and not worry about being interrupted.
That is great advice. I have never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Main benefit. Because you send somebody a blog post, it is one of 47 tabs that are open.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that one dings on some other tab, Facebook, got a message. You click it and distraction.
Yeah. So would you say that that's one of the biggest benefits for people for podcasting?
I feel like that is the only benefit.
Yeah, that's really, I never even thought of that. I'm like having a moment.
There are like features and characteristics that are great about podcasts.
Yeah.
But the one true benefit is uninterrupted time.
That is so cool. Amazing. Yeah, I know. I'm having like, I'm like, okay, now what do I do? I guess that takes me into my first question here. What are your first steps to launching a podcast from zero?
So the worst thing that you can say is I want to start a podcast or I want to start a blog, and then ask somebody, what should I do it on? Like this is the opposite of what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never go to Home Depot and buy a bunch of wood and come home and ask your neighbors what you should make.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not a thing.
Nope.
What should I make? I got some wood. Like that doesn't happen. If the idea that you want to start a podcast should come after you've decided what you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast is really a medium of distribution of a message.
Yeah.
Your message needs to come first. And your message could be as simple as how to take care of indoor houseplants.
Mm-hmm.
There are 5 great giant podcasts that talk about taking care of indoor houseplants. And the people who listen to those are people who love indoor houseplants. Like you're in your people, you're in your world.
Yeah.
So you need to know what value do you bring to the earth first. And then maybe a podcast is one way that you get that message out.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, then great. If it is, then if we're at that point, you're like, okay, I know what I want to say. How do I start? Well, that part is kind of easy. And for the most part, and this is great, a lot of the things when you first start a podcast are things you don't need to know twice. Like you only need to know how to upload your podcast to Apple Podcasts once. Like it's not something you have to memorize or practice.
Yeah.
It's not a huge giant learning curve. It really is go on to YouTube, how to submit my podcast to Apple Music, and then you're done. You don't have to remember it again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of basics, there's a little learning curve.
Yeah.
Like first you have to record, which means you need a microphone, and there's a microphone in your computer and there are microphones on your phone. So like there is no real reason you haven't started other than you haven't started because you're the reason.
Yeah.
You don't have a mic.
Trying to tell me something, Dan?
It's not like you don't have recording software because Google Meet is free. That's what we're on right now.
Exactly.
Zoom is available. Riverside. I have a Mac. It comes with GarageBand. Mm-hmm. I do my podcast on GarageBand with free software. So it's not like it's going to cost you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then you have to have a host. And you actually don't even have to have a host. You can host on your WordPress site because there are plugins that can give you what's called an RSS feed. And this piece of code is what you give Apple Music that says every time I have a new episode, this piece of code will tell you. Mm-hmm. So you don't even have to have a host. You can load it on your own WordPress site. But after that, the only thing you really have to have is some sort of dedication, some sort of commitment that you're actually going to do it.
Mm-hmm, that consistency.
That's the part that can be hard if you haven't prioritized it, I think is what I want to say. Mm-hmm. Because you know that if your daughter is sick, like you're taking off work, you're not doing anything, you're taking care of that person. Like you've prioritized that.
Yeah.
So if you can't get a podcast done every week, it's because you haven't prioritized it above the other things that you have to do every week. And that's not even a bad thing. You just have to acknowledge the other things I have to do are more important. I need to do a monthly podcast. Mm-hmm. I need to do a bi-weekly, or I need to do 5 in one day so that I can put it out weekly.
Yeah, great tip.
There are some podcast culture notes that are worth thinking through when you're going to start. For instance, just about every podcast app called a podcatcher shows your last 3 episodes on the screen when you bring it up.
Okay.
So just knowing that culturally means you should probably not launch until you have 3 episodes. Because you don't really want to have 2 blank spaces.
Yeah.
Those screens, like you just don't want that look.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. Another thing that's good to know is that for the most part, very similar to Netflix, people like to binge. They like to listen to an episode and then they listen to another episode. So they listen to all your episodes. And for some very strange reason, people like to unsubscribe when they have binged all of your episodes. There aren't any new ones. And then with the intention of resubscribing later, which I don't exactly know how that happens.
Interesting.
But, yes, but somehow in different going to podcast meetups and people say, oh yeah, I listened to your whole thing and then I unsubscribed for you. So you didn't think you had more people who weren't listening.
Oh, so they think that you're doing a favor?
Yeah. So you can't complain about it. Like,
yeah.
You just need to know it. Like, you just need to be okay with it. Like, oh, that's how it works. Okay.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay. Those are definitely good to know for sure. Now, like blogging, where everyone says you should niche down, is this the same when it comes to podcasting?
That's an interesting question. It's an interesting question because if you look at Good Housekeeping magazine, there are lots of stuff in it. There's recipes, there's bedding, there's home, there's stars, there's electronics, there's the Christmas list. Like, in some sense of the word, Good Housekeeping hasn't niched down. But in another sense of the word, they're going after women between 35 and 50. So they've niched down to the interests of women between 35 and 50. So when you're putting together a podcast, you really just need to think through, okay, who is going to listen to this? Who do I want to listen to this? And then what are they going to care about? And then are there more people like that? And is there something that I could do to cut that group in half because I don't need this other side? Or is there something you could add because you realize the group could be bigger? You just hadn't thought of it before.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to who is going to listen and what are they going to care about? So I happen to collect Pepsi cans, which I have done since I was 14 because my uncle worked at Pepsi.
Okay.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to tell on my podcast stories of the 20th century and then also talk about my Pepsi can collection.
Right.
Like, I know that you might be thinking about doing a podcast about all the things that you love, like some people say that. But are there a lot of people who really like all the things that you love together?
Yeah. So more knowing your audience, knowing your demo versus I have to talk about
now
this thing.
Cliff Ravenscraft, who was kind of like, he's one of the pioneers of podcasting. When the show Lost came out, he started a podcast about the show. And at the time, podcasts were very, very small. Like you really, really had to seek out specific websites. And then you actually had to download the episodes because it was more like I'm uploading my episode to this website, and then you just download it and listen to it on your computer. And so he started this Lost podcast, and it became really big. Like, it became the biggest podcast at the time that there was.
Wow.
It became so big that the show sent the cast members to Cliff to be interviewed on the podcast.
Oh, wow.
They were like, oh, yeah, we need our people to be part of this cult that's coming around. So when Lost was over, it's either he and his son or he and his wife, they started a relationships podcast. And what they found was that when they did another episode of Lost, maybe talking about, more things in the community, they would start to talk about, they started a new podcast about relationships. And what they found was a lot of people moved from lost to relationships. Because for those people, the niche wasn't the show. The niche was Cliff Ravenscraft. It was, we're going to follow. I like this guy's train of thought. I like the way he talks. I like his humor. Like, what is he going to say about relationships?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about that whole concept of niching down, like really think through, one, who's going to listen? And then as people fall in love with you and your voice and the show, would that give you the ability to expand maybe the show? Would it not give you that ability? And maybe the things that you want to do, you could put on the side for a moment, focus on topic A, and then maybe introduce topic B as a separate podcast in a year. You don't have to say no to it all, but I would say be conscious of who's going to listen.
Yeah.
And then why they're going to listen. And if they are a podcast listener, and today they have 21 different episodes from different shows that they follow that they could listen to, why would they continually pick yours?
Yeah.
Like, are they just going to pick it sometimes? Because sometimes I talk about Pepsi collections and they're like, I don't listen to Dan when he talks about that. Or do they listen every time? Because every time it's the topic that they love.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. So if we look at, all the podcasts that are out there, is there a specific type that generally performs better than others, like storytelling, interviews, educational content? Like if they're, we're looking at like the data of all these podcasts, like what is performing the best?
So that's an unrealistic question. So you have Joe Rogan.
Yeah. He's
got a 3-hour monster podcast with all kinds of crazy stuff on it. And then there's another monster podcast that happens to be 2 minutes long. And it's 4 kids brushing their teeth. And they're supposed to listen and brush their teeth the entire 2 minutes so that they brush well. And it has, millions of listeners every day.
Yeah.
Then you have a podcast. What is the name? It's all about like mental health space. I can't think of the name of it, but it's all calming music, calming topics. Headspace maybe is the name of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it has millions of views. And then you've got John Lee Dumas, and he does Entrepreneur on Fire, and he interviews entrepreneurs. And then you have NPR, and they have murder mystery stories.
Yeah.
So the question is, there isn't a genre that performs the best. There's great performing podcasts. And what I like to tell people is let's just say that 200 people listen to your episodes every week. And it's not the 50,000 that John Lee Dumas gets. But what if 200 people showed up on your front lawn with chairs every Friday just to hear you tell a story? Like,
yeah, that's huge.
Like, that's a different mindset. Like, really, 200 people. So question is, can you make a difference with your voice? How? And then how can you execute that best? And does it have to be the same every day? Like, there's a great one in the UK that we used to listen to a lot. And some days it was interviews. Some days it was the host talking. One day it was a game show. But it has always had the same general topic, but really it was more entertaining. So it was more kind of variety, different kinds of things.
Yeah.
They would have a guest try to tell what they did in 1 minute without repeating a word. They could repeat the words but no other word, and nobody could do it. So that was always entertaining. So there isn't really a format. What there is you. Like, what is it that you like to do? I tell stories. I don't have guests. I write 30-page stories every month, and I connect things that no one has ever connected. And then I tell stories that make you say, wow. But mine isn't supposed to bring in clients. That's a different goal.
Yeah.
Tanner Campbell in Portland, Maine He moved there because his wife got a job. He started a podcast studio, and then he just started interviewing after he went to like a Chamber of Commerce meeting, the other top business leaders in his town. And it was like whatever the name of the town was, that was the name of the podcast. And he was always interviewing people in the town. And then they all hired him to help set up a podcast for him. That was like his goal. He'll get business by interviewing town people, and then we'll help him set up a podcast. And it's a brilliant model.
Yeah, it is.
It's different than my model. And I want to be on NPR. I want to have a show.
Yeah.
So my goal is different, and so my topic is different. And the only thing I want you to do at the end is just say, "Wow, I had no idea that was a thing."
Yeah.
For me, that's a success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for Tanner, he wants you to say, "Yes, could I hire you to
hire you?" Yeah. So if you have somebody who is an influencer and they are like wildly established on Instagram, for instance, talking about, whatever, they're like a lifestyle influencer. Does it make most sense for them if they want to start a podcast to kind of take that same type of content, or will they only be successful in that sense, or can they start talking about something different?
So you can always talk about something different. You just have to know going in when you're going to talk about something different.
And have a plan.
I look to my left and I see coming to my door is an Amazon guy. Just waiting for the dog to freak out. I'm just
yeah, that's fine. All good. I have one of those too. I've had to mute myself quite a bit. I have a dog going crazy in the background.
New at-home lifestyle. So every time you talk about a new topic, it's really smart to tell your audience what you're up to and that you're doing, and have a way for them to opt in to future information so that they put themselves on your new list. They volunteered to learn about this new thing that you're doing. And then at some point in time, that transition of moving people from your old audience to your new audience should be done. Because when everyone has self-identified that, yes, I would love to learn about your houseplants, I'll go over there and listen to your podcast. Like, the rest of the people probably don't need to keep hearing it. Like, you sort of, maybe you'll mention it every once in a while, but you should take, a few weeks of, hey, I've got this new thing, and move yourself over, subscribe, join the email list or whatever. But after that, you're on two different trains.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of that from a business standpoint. I think that you should always be building one audience. So we have BC Stack, which we do every June, where we sell 65 digital marketing products. And then I have Podcasters Kit, which I do in October, where we sell digital marketing for podcasters. But there's a digital marketing component to both of them.
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to talk to both. And then we do Blogging Concentrated events out in the real world, where we teach how to turn your digital marketing into a career, because it still has that same thread.
Yeah.
I still want one community as we grow. My podcast is totally separate. I don't really mention it too much. I'm building the audience separate. It's it's century history. That's just not related to how to build an Instagram audience.
Yeah.
So every once in a while I mention it, but otherwise that's my other thing, building some things. And it's my favorite thing. And when it makes enough money, then I can quit the first thing.
Absolutely. Well, since you brought it up, I would love for you to share. I know I'm changing topics a little bit, but a little bit about Blogging Concentrated, because that was how I was first connected with Dan. He helped me so much in, getting my blog off the ground. And it's so funny because that we're talking today, because as we're speaking, my whole website is being revamped and it's getting done for, just the purpose of ad placement and, all of these different things. So, and this is something I'm such an advocate of: start a blog. So I would just love for you to share a little bit about that with everybody.
So blogs are great.
Yeah.
My wife's a blogger.
Yeah.
She writes funnyjoy.net, and that's a giant,
She's amazing. Please, everybody go check Rachel out. If you have, everybody in here probably is already reading all of her books, and she's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty fun.
As are you.
She's got 1.2 million fans on Facebook without ever paying a dime to advertise.
Amazing.
Like everything is organic, and it all comes from the writing.
Mm-hmm.
That same concept is true for John Lee Dumas, who grew his podcast. And his is organic. All of it came from his voice.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that decision, and something that we teach at Blogging Concentrated, is there are different mediums. You know, there's huge YouTubers. They love the camera. They're great on camera, and we like to see them on camera. That's the appeal. Like, why would you hide that and do a podcast or an audio podcast if having your face in front of the camera is where you really need to be? And then if you don't like any of that, like, why not blog? Use your voice in words and write on Medium. You know, blogging is a little different than it used to be. Now people subscribe to blogs on Substack, and they pay on Medium, and then they read them on WordPress, and they see them on Today Parents and Huffington Post. So there's many places to get your words out, writing, just as there are with podcasts and video.
Yeah.
So we like to teach people, look, when you have a message, like, it'd be really good for you to first fall into the space that's the most comfortable. Because there are enough speed bumps in the way of success that you don't need to be in your own way. So, like, if you don't really like being on camera, there is no reason to start being a YouTuber. Like, if somebody just told you and you're just trying to get over it, like, that, you don't really have to. There's enough other speed bumps that will slow you down, like podcasts. Do that. Or blog. You don't, and then there's even faceless videos now on
and reels and stuff,
which I don't know where I fit in there. Then there's all this new AI stuff, which I am not a huge fan of. Sometimes a little ways, but so far it's very strange.
We have an AI expert as part of this masterclass, and she shared like a really cool bot with everybody. And it's very interesting. It definitely, for me, streamlines my workflow a bit, but you do have to, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just let it run wild.
Yes. Yeah, I've my kid, one of our children, uses ChatGPT like it's a friend. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And then like shares feelings, and they have weird conversations. I'm like, what is happening right now?
I know. The bot's name is Corey, and I find myself like messaging her, and I'm like, hey Corey, like, how are you today? And I'm like, why am I doing this?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are ways that AI could help podcasters, but I have not got into that yet.
Yeah. Next time we'll talk about that in a year.
Yes.
No, that's awesome. Cool. So circling back to, podcasting for influencers who are very much ingrained in social media, right? That's like sort of their main hub. What are ways that influencers can repurpose their podcast for social?
Oh, I mean, that's to some degree, endless. It's actually better than blogging because you can do everything that bloggers do.
Right.
Plus use Headliner and make audiograms, which bloggers could do, but they don't traditionally do that.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of an interesting idea to do an audiogram for a blog post.
I'm
going to see if Rachel would do that.
Yeah, check it out. Let me know.
So you can take your podcast, you can take it over to Headliner, and there's many of these sites. And then Headliner, it basically brings your entire audio feed up on the screen, and then you can kind of move the highlighter and like pick a little spot of the conversation, and then it will instantly turn that into almost like a GIF, but like a video, a reel or something. And it's got the little
this little bar, like the
little
bar. Yeah.
little talking bar,
Yeah.
and some words on the screen and a background, like instant. You just pick a little thing and it makes it. And then you've got your podcast graphics, and you've got one for each show, hopefully. And you could obviously do many for any particular episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can guest on other people's podcasts, but you can also advertise on other people's podcasts by recording a little, like a little headliner snippet and sharing it with another podcaster. And you just swap and you put them on each other's shows.
I like
And then
that.
it's almost like you just telling, hey, come over and listen to this thing this week.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then what I like about that is that you're already talking to people who understand podcasting at that point. Because some people don't listen. So when you tell them to listen, then they're like, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And then when that happens, I'm almost like, it was good chat.
Yeah, because sometimes people are just like, they just want to be on Instagram. They have no desire to hop over, even if you share it in real form, and they're like, oh, I want to hear more. They're just not podcast people, and vice versa. So
now I am a podcast purist. So I don't normally share this, but this is absolutely true. Most of the big podcasts put their shows on YouTube. And then most of their views come from YouTube.
Interesting.
Yes.
And then you get the visual.
To me, that's called a YouTube video.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
But podcasters say, no, I have my podcast on YouTube. And I'm like, but is it like just the little voice thing? And they're like, no, we video the whole session. I'm like, isn't that a YouTube video?
Yeah, I would say.
Like a talk show?
Yeah, but then I mean, some people just don't want to listen to a podcast. They'd rather watch it, consume it via YouTube.
Spotify and YouTube are the biggest places where people listen.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's jump into like the money talk, right? Yeah. So how can an influencer monetize their podcast, either with traditional sponsorships or, beyond that?
Okay. So there's one way to do this. And in my opinion, there's only one way.
Okay.
And it's not for podcasters. It's for people with an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an audience, and a podcast audience, a blog audience, a social media audience, it doesn't matter. Because for a company, they don't care either. They need to get their message in front of an audience. Hopefully they're trying to get their message in front of an audience that meets their demographics, their customer profile.
Yeah.
So what's really nice is figuring out your customer profile. And sometimes that means simple things like asking your audience what magazines they read. A very simple question to ask. But when you ask what magazines do you read, every single magazine, I don't know if there's an exception, they all have media kits. And you can go find the Good Housekeeping media kit. And it will tell you the demographics of the audience, who they are, how much they make. So if your audience keeps telling you that they get Good Housekeeping and they got Runner's Magazine, well, go to Good Housekeeping and Runner's Magazine and do your own assessment. Okay, what is my audience from these two stats? So figure out who you are, because you can't talk to a sponsor unless you could talk logically about what you bring to the table.
Yep.
And then step 2, it makes a lot of sense if you could target someone that you could benefit. Like if you use Mac for everything you do, then you could probably benefit Apple by talking about all the things that you do on your Mac. So you need to figure out who can you help. Like that should be the only name of the game when it comes to sponsorship. If you want someone to say their name, you need to actually make them money. Like you need to be someone who helps them. Like, why are you taking money if you're not going to help them, right? That's the whole idea. So find somebody you can actually help. And for us, the first company that we got as a sponsor was the people who invented the selfie stick. We got a hold of them very early on, maybe like 2015 or something.
Oh, wow.
And then they sponsored Plug and Concentrated for a while. And then during that, we pitched the whole selfie stick and we brought them and We brought ones they could buy and all the stuff.
Yeah.
So you need to find someone who you can help. And I'm hoping that you find 10, find several, because it's a numbers game when you ask about sponsorships.
Yeah.
Then if you can go find out where they advertise, that would be great. Like if you could find an advertisement in Good Housekeeping magazine, then you can go to the advertising section of the magazine and figure out how much did they pay for this quarter page ad. And then everybody knows that a magazine lasts like 60 days before it's gone. So now you have a pretty good idea of what this company is willing to pay, who they're trying to reach, and how long they're going to reach them, and how much money they're going to spend.
Smart. So
now you just build a campaign, an actual campaign. You're going to pitch a campaign. It doesn't matter if you're a podcaster. It can be anybody. You're going to say, look, I reach 5,000 people a week with my podcast, with my blog, with my Instagram. And they come X number of times a day or a week to visit the site. I would like to propose, and maybe it would be helpful to do a little press release research on the company. Maybe they've issued a press release and they're trying to launch a new product or a new function.
Yeah.
I would like to help you launch this thing, or I'd like to help you promote your product or whatever it is. And this is what I'm intending to do. I'm going to talk about you at the beginning of 8 episodes in the next 13 weeks. And these are the topics I'm going to hit on those 13 episodes. Then I'm going to back that up by putting your logo at the bottom of my podcast graphic, but I'm also going to post a picture of your product like 6 times in those 13 weeks, and I'm going to make a video of me using it. This is what I'm going to charge, and this is why we charge this, because you're paying $20,000 to be a quarter page ad in Good Housekeeping magazine, and it only lasts 60 days, and you can only reach this amount of people. For that same amount of money, we're going to reach 5 times the number of people. They're going to see it 55 more times than if they saw it in Good Housekeeping. And we're going to give you all the stats that you need, the click-throughs from our site to your site, so that you can see the benefit that we bring.
All about that data.
That's a pitch.
Yep.
And then you do that again. You do it multiple times.
Over and over and over. Yeah, that's like something that I, teach with Influencer Secrets. Like, I feel like media kits are just like, meh. You can get any of that information just by looking at somebody, just going to their Facebook page or, whatever. I teach to build a case study, pulling all of that data together and showing them what you can actually do, because you let the numbers do the talking. And then oftentimes it doesn't matter how many followers you have. Like, you have to be able to show like what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to get you the money.
But you should also be very proud of where you are. So instead of trying to get John Lee Dumas's fees for his 50,000 downloads, be proud of the fees you can command with your 800 downloads.
Yeah.
This is where you're at. Be excited. Like, I could help you. It's much less money over there, but this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be sincere. You're going to have all these assets going forward. Have these episodes you can put on your social media accounts. I mean, all the stuff. But just be proud of where you are. Like, you'll grow.
Yeah. So how many downloads would you say that you need to have for your podcast before you can start pitching brands? Like, what's the significant, like a good starting point?
I mean, I would say 10.
10?
I mean, I would say 1, really.
Love it. That's what I love to hear.
Like,
hey.
Suppose you have an indoor houseplants podcast, and you just want to promote the lady who's trying to sell the macrame indoor houseplant hanging frame.
Yeah.
like you have the audience for her, even if you only have 10. Just say, I've got 10. Let's see if we can sell 10.
Yeah.
I mean, if it costs $30 for each one, that means if she sells 10, she's going to make 300. So charge $30.
There you go.
I mean, she's got to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great logic. I love it. Let's see. feel like we've covered a lot of my questions. I know there's a few more. Let's see. What are like the best ways, I guess, to promote your podcast to get like steady subscribers?
So this is probably going to be your favorite part of this whole interview.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
So if you're sitting there, grab your popcorn. This is my favorite part.
Okay.
I am a huge fan of vested audiences.
Okay.
Which I think is a name that I came up with. But when I explain it to you, you're going to be like, this was the greatest thing I have ever heard. That's what you're about to say.
Okay.
You're about to say.
Okay.
So there are people on this planet who are paid to promote what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to figure this out. And in fact, I only figured it out after it happened. So I'm going to explain what happened. I had an episode about the history of pizza. And it all goes back to Naples, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a cholera epidemic. Cholera was transmitted because people didn't clean things.
Mm-hmm.
So pizza at the time was a fried dough. So like every bacteria would be killed when they fried the dough. Mm-hmm. So it just became common knowledge that if you ate the pizza, you wouldn't get sick. Like that was just part of the thing.
Yeah.
So after I did the episode, I was thinking about marketing it. And I thought, who might think this is cool is like people who are into cholera. So I decided like a historian that's like totally studies cholera or something. So I decided I'm going to get a Google Alerts account, which became unsupported. So then I switched over to TalkWalker Alerts. And I started tracking anytime anyone mentioned cholera, which at first was a tremendous amount of people.
Yeah.
Then I did like cholera and the word history. Like if there's anything that came up that had the word history and cholera, I would be interested in knowing. And it didn't take very long, maybe a week, before someone on Twitter said something about the history of cholera. I was like,
ding, ding, ding.
Oh, if you're interested in that, you will love this episode. And then that was it. And then a couple of days later, I got a DM, and the lady said, "I listened to that episode. That was the most fascinating thing I have ever heard." I was like, "Get out!" That's awesome. So I said that. I was like, "That is awesome." I screenshot that and sent it to my mom. So I told her. So then the next day, she goes, "You probably don't know this, but I am a cholera historian, and I have a newsletter that goes out to about 20,000 people that are interested in cholera, that research it, that do all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to put your episode in a blurb in the newsletter."
Amazing.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Oh, like, are you? That is holy mackerel. So all of a sudden, I was in this cholera historian's newsletter. Now, this lady sends this out every month, and she has to find content to put in the newsletter that would serve her audience. So she is paid to promote my podcast. So I was like, can I do that again?
Yeah.
So then I decided, okay, I want to really start using TalkWalker. So now, by the way, I have 380 alerts maybe that I get every day. And it's my morning coffee ritual.
Okay.
As I go through my alerts and I look for people who would be interested. And so over the last few years, I have found, just by keeping track of my topic keywords, one of them was Ripley's Believe It or Not. And when I forget what they tweeted about, but it fit what my episode was about. So I replied Like, I totally just told that story in this episode, and I included something you probably don't know, like the teaser.
Yeah.
And the link. And the Ripley's Believe It or Not lady wrote back and said, I cannot believe that we didn't know that about Robert Ripley. And I was like, really? She said, we're going to make a cartoon about that fact and put it in Ripley's Believe It or Not and credit your podcast.
Awesome.
Like, are you kidding me? So that was another one.
Yeah.
So over the years now, I have found that there are lots of people who have a vested interest in your topic.
Mm-hmm.
And they will share it because that's what they do.
Yeah.
So BC Stack is once I learned this lesson, I started to apply it to other things. So I thought to myself, okay, who has a vested interest in digital marketing products?
Yeah.
And I thought, what about State Farm? They have agents all over the United States, and they all have their own offices, and they're all trying to get people into their office. So I called them and I said, hey, this is what I do. And I had to work my way around. I had to find the right person, this lady who is in charge of like continuing education for agents in HR at corporate. It took me a little bit.
Yeah.
So then I told her what we did, and she was like, can I get that to all the agents? I was like, yeah, it's just a link.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
How could you not? And I said, I'll even give you a discount code.
Yeah.
But, it's 27,000 agents.
Yeah, that's huge.
And the only reason that she shared it with them in their news, their email, was because she had a vested interest in them learning more about digital marketing. Like that was her thing. If I can get them to learn more, then I am the hero for sharing it with them. That's the concept. Yeah. So over and over and over, I thought it was sitting next to me, but it's not. My alumni magazine from the University of Nebraska every month features alumni. So one day I was like, wait, they have a vested interest in me because I'm alumni.
Yeah.
I wrote a little bio. I wrote a little thing about the podcast, and then the magazine showed up the next month. I was in it.
That's awesome.
What?
Sometimes you just have to like think outside the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another example, trying to help people see outside the box, is the kids were looking for college scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody searches for like 2025 scholarships, but there's thousands that go and nobody applies for it. So I was like, okay, who wants to give you a scholarship? Who wants to? And my stepkids, their grandfather was in the Korean War. And I was like, let's see if there are descendants of the Korean War scholarships. And there were.
Yeah.
You need to apply for them all. Like show what your grandfather did, and then they win scholarships. Why? Because this group has an interest in the kids because they're in this lineage from the Korean War.
Yes.
So the concept of vested audience for me is how you grow a show. Is you find the people who already have an interest, and they basically have a community. I have speakinglatino.com was a client. And they teach Spanish slang. And guess what? There is a teachers association, Spanish teachers association in every state. Every state has one, and the country has one. And then there's Facebook groups with Spanish teachers. They all have an interest in, slang. Our teachers love that. I'm like, oh, there we go. So to me, you're going to grow your show and grow your subscribers. Don't ask your mom and your Facebook friends. I mean, that's great. But find people
not gonna do it.
Really want to know that stuff and like
that information.
That's their world.
I love that. Yeah.
I use Talkwalker.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna write that down because I'm not familiar with that.
It's like Google Alerts, but it's Talkwalker.
Okay, gotcha.
You just get an email every day.
Love it. That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna look into that for sure. Oh my goodness. So much information. My last question I'm going to ask is, what is, I guess, your biggest piece of advice for somebody who is an influencer who wants to start a podcast? What is the one thing you want them to take away?
I think there are like 2 million podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure last month, only 200,000 had a new episode.
Mm.
Because there are really only 200,000 podcasts.
Mm.
Everyone quits as a
Wow.
general rule. Why do they quit? Because they didn't think it through. That's
Mm.
Now, that might mean they didn't think through that their kid just started soccer and the other kid just started baseball, and now they're not going to have time. They just didn't think it through. Or they had a great idea, but they didn't think about 9 great ideas. Like they got through the first 3 episodes and they're like, what else are we going to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe you should have thought of that 3 episodes ago. Like,
Yeah. So how about plan, plan.
Yes. So think about it.
Yeah.
Really think about it. Like we're talking about, if you're doing it weekly, you're talking about spending an hour talking to someone or more,
Mm-hmm.
and then editing, and then doing your stuff, and then doing the backup stuff.
Yeah.
And if you have guests, people cancel. So if you're going to do it weekly, how many guests do you need to be to be assured that you get one done? Do you have 3 hours a week to think about that?
Yeah.
Just make sure that you could do it. And starting is great. Started and quit. I mean, that's great. We all start stuff and quit in our lives. But I would say most people quit. So maybe they should take that into consideration and just give it a little extra thought. How would we do this?
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you need to do it in the car. Like you need to use recording software on your phone, and you actually need to record your whole thing on the drive because that's the only time you have.
Do it. Yep.
And you have to use Audacity to pull out your unwanted sounds in the background, which is one button. But maybe that's what you need to do. And you need to settle on the idea that you're not going to have studio quality sound.
Yeah.
Be okay with it because it's your message that matters more than the studio quality.
I love that. That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate having you here. And I know that I learned so much today. Podcasting is a brand new thing to me. So I know that, everybody who's tuning in today is leaving with a wealth of knowledge.
Rock on.
So awesome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time, bye.